This is Detroit's Morning Answer with John Anthony on FM 92.7 and AM 1400. The Answer.
My husband, Charlie Kirk, is a force. He is a force. He is bold when the world demands silence. He is fearless where others flinch, and he has taken on the battle of the next generation, changing these hearts and minds. I know you guys have seen it at the college campuses, changing the hearts and minds of these kids. It's not a career to him, it's a calling. And it's so incredible to see as a wife how God has prepared him, how God has molded him and used him. All while he's doing that, he's still the spiritual head of our family. It is my honor to be able to introduce you guys to one of the greatest fighters that I know, who is so intentional, who is so amazing. And he never backs down from the fight because he knows who and what he fights for, and that is God, it's his family, and it's country. I want to introduce you guys to my husband, Charlie Kirk.
That was Erika Kirk at a previous Turning Point event. I wanted to play that because I wanted you to get a gist of just who she is and the force in which she is. And we'll play the I Forgive Him later on in this interview. But I wanted somebody to come on who I believe understands the time we find ourselves in. Leslie Corbly is an author, a columnist, a poet, an attorney who brings a rare combination of legal insight, cultural commentary, and theological reflection to today's most pressing issues. She holds a BA in journalism and a JD from the University of Oklahoma College of Law. Her writings span civil liberties, philosophy, classical wisdom, theology, and the enduring dignity of the human person. Leslie's latest book, Progressive Prejudice, Exposing the Devouring Mother, is a bold examination of how cultural narratives can twist compassion into control and reshape our freedoms. Today, we'll discuss Erika Kirk's appointment as the new CEO of Turning Point USA and what it means for the conservative movement, as well as how Leslie's work speaks directly into this moment. Leslie, welcome back to Detroit's More Than Answer.
Thanks so much for having me.
I really appreciate it. Leslie, now, Turning Point USA, they've been a true defining force in conservative youth activism for years. With Erika Kirk stepping into the CEO role, what does this transition mean for the organization's identity and long-term direction?
Well, I think it means that they're going to, I guess I would think it means that they're going to continue to have a major impact and also continue to be defined by the activism of Charlie Kirk, their founder, because I would imagine she's going to carry on his legacy in that way. So I would say that I would imagine in some ways it would bolster their activism because of the huge growth they've seen in the wake of his assassination and the fact that they're going to continue, I would imagine, on with the same vision that he had, which was obviously working.
Yeah. Now, Erika comes to this role, in my opinion, with a unique blend of faith and because I don't think a lot of people understand. I mean, she was Miss Arizona, I believe it was, with a unique blend of I think, faith and media experience. How do you think those gifts will allow her to connect with young people? Because right now, Turning Point now has up to 120,000 folks looking to start a TPUSA chapter at their high school or college. That's outstanding and that's amazing. And it was really after her speech, correct?
Yes, it was. Obviously there was a lot of buzz even in the immediate wake of his assassination, but her taking the helm, I do think, signals that the organization is really serious about carrying on his legacy, not just in word or rhetoric, but in reality. She clearly really understood his vision. She's a wealth of experience in her own right in entrepreneurial and business endeavors. And so I think she will be uniquely positioned to be able to do that effectively.
Yeah, I also think I think her vision will probably move beyond just college campuses. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more churches. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more community inspired events. Do you think how do you think veering off into those avenues will help the legacy of not only Charlie Kirk but Turning Point USA?
In some ways, I think it would have not required, but I think the fact that he was assassinated makes those options much more viable, because it brought his philosophy, his activism, who he was as a person, to entirely new audiences that likely had little to no knowledge of him prior.
Yeah,
and it makes it viable, right, to bring the brand to a much broader audience and make their activism more relevant to people who just may not have had any interest or inherent knowledge of what he was about.
Yeah. And, it's been said that her clothing line and her Bible and 365 have just exploded. How might that digital ministry background help her connect with young people who are searching for meaning? I mean, over 90,000 people in attendance, 100 million plus people streamed in and watched the homegoing services of Charlie Kirk. That speaks volumes, right?
It does. It absolutely does. And I think that there's huge opportunity both for her and the organization, which is really awful to say, in the wake of someone's death.
Yeah.
But it is the world we live in, and it's the nature of reality in a digital realm that, attention is currency. And what Tyler Robinson did by shooting Charlie Kirk that day was give him an enormous amount of currency in the digital realm. And so, yeah, I think that she has both the ability, the acumen to pull this off, and I think she's uniquely positioned to do it because of her connection to Charlie Kirk, not just as his wife, but as his confidant. I think it's interesting too, because it will be fascinating to see both what she does as the head of the organization, but also really undermines a lot of the character assassination that has gone on surrounding Charlie Kirk and his alleged bigotry, misogyny, just a lot of reputation attacks that have come in the wake of his death. That may take small clips and try to take them out of context, whatever it may be. But, and it's not even, again, what fascinates me is it's not about agreeing with his ideology,
right.
But this idea that he was somehow bigoted or hateful.
Right.
And having someone like her take the helm, I think really undermines that. I mean, frankly, I always thought his life in general undermined the idea he was a misogynist or bigot.
Yeah.
But I think that just makes it more difficult to sell that idea to those in the public who aren't already leftist zealots.
Every time I see how his words were taken out of context, I engage. I got this group called Progressive 2.0 who are coming after me now because they continue to say that he was hate. Even when you produce the full length clip and provide the context, they still double down. And then they get angry and want to, call you stupid. And I've been called coon, Uncle Tom, because I'm standing with the white man. It's like, no, I'm standing with truth. And truth, I mean, and that's basically what you're trying to present in Progressive Prejudice, correct? The truth is
yes, it is. It is. Although it's funny, I mentioned in Progressive Prejudice something that I think is really important. It's very timely, which is that we have such an easy time critiquing male-dominated spaces, but we don't know how to critique female-dominated spaces. So just as a quick example, we saw a clip where Charlie Kirk, I think, made the comment that young men don't like to be told what to do by women. And he was referring to how education for most of a young man's life is dominated by female authority figures. And I think what he was trying to point out is there needs to be balance in children's life of having healthy authority figures that are both men and women. Yeah. And I think that's true. But what's fascinating was it was on social media and the clip was being used. The person in the clip was talking to her young boys, essentially trying to say, look, this makes him look like a misogynist.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating because we don't criticize or think ill of someone who says young women don't like to be told what to do by, say, their fathers.
True.
right?
Now,
So if they're others in progressive spaces.
you know, when I saw the title Progressive Prejudice, I was like, okay. But then when I saw Exposing the Devouring Mother, that title itself is striking. Can you explain what do you mean by the devouring mother, and how does that show up in modern progressive culture?
Sure. So going back to that idea that we don't know how to critique the feminine. So the archetype of female predation is the devouring mother, which is someone who uses those who are dependent on her care as a source of her own pleasure or, need rather than for the care of the actual individual. So an example of that would be Munchausen by proxy, which is a disorder where it's almost always a woman. It's usually her children or someone who is dependent on her care. The woman takes advantage of the child by creating fictitious disorders and then treating the child for disorders the child doesn't have. And this feeds their need for attention, validation. They get to be this amazing caretaker or what have you. And I would argue that at a sort of structural and emotional level goes on a lot more than people are willing to recognize. And I think that the idea of critiquing women as authority figures in the emotional realm is incredibly taboo in culture. We don't know how to do it. And I think that's a problem because women have actually a huge amount of authority in the caretaking realm. So women control, frankly, the structure of a child's environment in education context and in other contexts that nurture their very early development. And that's an enormous amount of power. That doesn't mean that they are always doing a bad job. I'm just saying I don't think we know how to criticize or speak of the actual power women have in that realm, right? So feminists talk a lot about emotional labor and how this is a burden to them, but they don't talk about how that's actually power, right?
Wow, that's my brain is trying to process that because it's so true. I mean, I'm thinking through it, and based upon that, in Progressive Prejudice, you also argue that compassion can be twisted into a tool of control. What lessons from that work would you want Erika to carry as she communicates these messages of care, safety, and sanctity?
Sure, I think one thing to take away from it is that anything that it's not compassionate to keep people on your care under your care permanently unless they need it. So independence is actually a virtue, and I think those on the left struggle with that to some degree. There's a lot of learned helplessness, a lot of victim mentalities that kind of run rampant on the left. And while there are obviously problems with maybe the other end of the extreme, which is pull yourself up by your bootstraps despite, an inability to do so, right? I mean, there needs to be a balance for sure. But those on the left, definitely, I would say their problem in progressive culture tends to be this idea that you are compassionate to a fault and that you are unwilling or unable to hold people accountable for what they've done wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an issue there. You can see this in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, but again, just in the reality that we don't, I think it's crazy and somewhat hypocritical that we can say something as obvious as young girls don't want to listen to their fathers or something along those lines, but we can't say the same truth about young boys. They probably aren't going to want to just listen to women. I mean, there's gender dynamics going on here, and to be able to say that, I think, is a reflection of just reality. It's not a reflection of misogyny or, in the case of girls, them hating their dads. It's just a reality of growing up, right? You need a balance of authority figures that are both healthy men and healthy women.
That is so true. If you're just joining the show, we're talking to Leslie Corbly. She's the author of Progressive Prejudice, Exposing the Devouring Mother. I've been playing this audio clip to a lot of people that deal in the culture. This really hurts my heart. Would you consider this lady, this mother, as one of those devouring mothers? I want to play this audio and get your take on it.
I have the best news ever.
What? Donald Trump died?
Second best news.
The vice president died?
Okay, third best news.
That Elon Musk died?
Okay, no. Nobody died. My best friend's getting married.
Which one is it?
Taylor Swift! Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce got engaged.
I mean, that is just sick, deranged, and twisted, Leslie.
It is. And, you listen to that and you just think, wow, someone's childhood and innocence was stolen, because that's not how children think naturally in the world. And so, yes, I would say that is an example of what I'm talking about, which is instilling in children sort of, again, women have a lot of power when it comes to molding and instilling the value structure of a child.
Yeah.
And it's insane to me that we don't talk about how powerful that is. And it's not to say that often they don't do a great job. Of course, often they do, or maybe even in the majority of cases. But the reality is that the environment that a child grows up in is almost guaranteed to be heavily controlled by female influences.
Now,
and we need to have a conversation about what that looks like.
Exactly.
And the pros and cons.
And that's why you're on the show. But, I mean, you hear this mother, but then you hear this mother say this. The compare and the contrast is night and day.
That man, that young man, I forgive him.
I forgive him because it was what Christ did and is what Charlie would do.
I mean, Leslie, you hear that. People think that was easy to utter those words. That was probably the hardest thing she's ever had to utter in her entire existence in this place called Earth. What say you, Leslie?
Yes, I would agree it is. And I think one thing that's interesting and fascinating to watch is the degree to which those on the left, I think, are holding up are really showing the hypocrisy of progressive culture to those who aren't steeped in progressive culture. Yeah. So what I mean by that is that, they harp a lot on prejudice and bigotry, misogyny, hatred in their opponents. And this is actually goes back to them smearing Charlie Kirk on the week of his death as being this sort of, purveyor of hate. And I think that they're really struggling to come to terms with the fact that they look really hateful often themselves. And it's because they can't. I think there's a huge issue in progressive culture with being able to self-reflect and look at their own worldview and go, who might stand on the margins of my worldview, right? Wow. Because every worldview has the ability to do this. You know what I mean? No matter who you are, no matter what you believe, you have the ability to internalize hate.
Yeah.
And I don't think they know that about themselves. And so they're frankly engaging in often hateful, disturbing, vile rhetoric or behavior. And the public, again, like you just said, the contrast is very clear. So, for example, the same people who complained about fundamentalism and religious systems harming people, and yet what do they do in the wake of the death of some of their political opponent? They engage in smearing him. There were vandalizations of his vigil. I mean, it's really fascinating to me because I'm going, I don't think you can it's almost like there's a complete lack of awareness of what this looks like to someone who's even neutral or independent, has no real dog in the fight. It looks really gross.
I was looking for an audio. I can't find it, but it was this kid. It was a male kid singing a song, "We Got Charlie in the Neck, We Got Charlie in the Neck." I mean, just the vileness of these celebrations. He's probably one of those kids that was raised by a devouring mother, right?
Probably, but I mean, I would argue really the entire collegiate environment, especially higher ed, is governed by. I mean, that's one of the most. It's a progressive sanctuary. The fact he was killed there is very meaningful from a symbolic and cultural standpoint. I don't think that's lost on most people. Yeah. That in order to go into those environments, it's literally dangerous physically, not just emotionally, not just you might be laughed at, but physically for people who do not uphold progressive orthodoxy.
That is so true. Leslie, where can people get your book?
Sure. So it's on Amazon.com. You can just type in either my name or Progressive Prejudice. Also on my website at lesliecorbly.com.
Okay. And people can follow you on social media as well?
Absolutely. At Corbly Leslie on X or at Corbly _Leslie on Instagram, or they're both public profiles. So if you type in Leslie Corbly on either platform, I'll pop up.
All right. Leslie Corbly, author of Progressive Prejudice, Exposing the Devouring Mother. Thank you so much once again for joining us on Detroit's Morning Answer. It's been a privilege and a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
All right. That's Leslie Corbly, folks. Go out and get that book, Progressive Prejudice, Exposing the Devouring Mother. I really do like that title. And you know what's really refreshing? To see that a woman wrote that type of book, to have that conversation. Because, they tell us that us men, we can't have those type of conversations. But you know me, I'll have any conversation here on these airwaves. I will never be bullied into anybody telling me what conversations we cannot have, Paul. Just won't happen. All right, guys. I told you this was a jam-packed show today. Curtis Hill, Project 21 ambassador, the 43rd Attorney General of the state of Indiana, coming up next. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.